Good afternoon and welcome to Brave Embrace. I have been enjoying the summer and I hope that you have as well. So last month we had a dynamic survivor, Janine Miller, who opened our eyes to an epidemic issue that she and several other warriors are working to impact the issue of what's being called like the troubled teen industry. And today we have Janine back with us, and we also have an amazing brave survivor, Amanda, with us today. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was so moved after our conversation, Janine, and in researching the work that you've done. And you introduced us to Amanda Householder and explained her story. And Amanda, it's an honor to have you, both of you. You just shine this joy despite the circumstances, these difficult life experiences that you've gone through. And so, Amanda, I would just love for you to tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you here and what battle you've been fighting for the last couple of years.
What brought me onto the show, or just
brought you kind of to this field. I know that we shared recently about some of the homes where there is rampant abuse going on, and as a survivor, I'd love to hear your perspective on your experience.
So I was born into the Independent Fundamental Baptist cult, which is a religious section of Christianity. But in 1994, my parents started working or it could have been 1993. I was very, very young. Early 90s, my parents started working in what is known as the troubled teen industry in Lester Roloff schools. So these schools are modeled after the Lester Roloff Rebecca Homes for girls. And so basically my parents, my whole entire childhood, worked at different schools throughout the United States. Eventually, they would open up their own in Humansville, Missouri, named Circle of Hope, which is what has brought me to this journey in life. Basically, at these schools, kids are getting tortured. They're not rehabilitating them like they are saying that they are. They're torturing the girls. My mom and dad together have 98 counts of abuse, neglect, and the majority of my dad's charges are for sodomy and I think sodomy and rape, or it could be sodomy and molestation, I forget. But that's basically what's going on there. And so in 2000, it was after my first son. I had him in 2012. Basically, memories of what happened in my childhood came flooding to me, and I realized what was happening to me was still happening to other people's kids. And after my second son, I got together with a whole bunch of girls from Circle of Hope and started a survivor group called Proactive Survivors. And so from there, a whole group of us started working on exposing what happened behind Circle of Hope. My parents also worked at a school in Missouri called Agape, and myself and another survivor named Colton Schrog, and my friend Joe Barnett, who is no longer with us, we started a group called something TTI, I forget, but we started a group back then. It was just us three, and we were trying to expose Agape. In 2018, we had an investigation opened up on Circle of Hope, and I begged and begged for this Travis Hitchcock to talk to Colton, and he did. And so he was going to open up a investigation on Agape. Well, a week after us begging and him telling us that he would look into it, the Circle of Hope case was shut and nothing went further into Agape until 2020. Wow. And we got a video within Circle of Hope, and we went to TikTok. And because we went to TikTok, we had thousands of people calling the Attorney General's office, calling the governor, and calling Ty Gaither on their own. We never asked for them to do it. They just did. And they were asking what's going on with Circle of Hope. It was reported to us that Ty Gaither actually hung up the phone saying, "We don't know what's going on. We are overwhelmed with the amount of calls. Don't call our office again." And so wow. Basically, after they got so many calls, we got the school shut down, the girls removed, and we got laws passed in July 2021. And largely that's due to people like Janine for helping us get our story out on YouTube and supporting us through the whole thing.
I'll tell you what, I am just overcome quickly. I know you have another event that you have to go to this morning, but I wanted to just recap really quick how brave and how courageous you have been in this battle, not only experiencing this yourself, this being your reality, your family, but then taking the cause and being the voice for so many and exposing. Yet it sounds like you kind of hit roadblock after roadblock and barriers, yet you persevered. And not only was the school closed, parents arrested, all of these charges, but you have been able to move into this beautiful advocacy and fight your way through with law changes and things, and just in awe. And we love this platform to be able to celebrate bravery like this. And I'm really honored by you and honored by your story. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say about Amanda, for her to be in that cult for so many years is just absolutely, I just don't know how she endured it, because the kids are being abused in an independent fundamental Baptist, whether they're the staff kids or residential, part of the program kids. And she was abused for years until she finally ran away. Yeah.
Had to flee. I mean, and then as she beautifully explained that it took a while to understand that had not even been, that wasn't normal. That wasn't what was occurring in other homes. So that complete trauma that just took over her, yet, how she has been had so much perseverance to fight through that. She mentioned her relationship with you and your support and ability. How have you been able to gather these voices and really get them out there for change?
Sorry about my ums. Hopefully we can just edit that out.
You're totally fine.
At any rate, I feel that these platforms are a really big tool to have survivors come on, tell their story, be brave, and get the awareness out there. Mm-hmm. To me, it's one testimony after another. You would think that Agape boarding school or other schools would be closed down by now because of these testimonies, but they're not.
Right. And have you been able to, kind of see what the pauses are? Is it local government? Is it resistance from law enforcement or the courts? What are the reasons why there's such a battle when these cases are identified to close the school down?
I can't say it time and time again, but my personal opinion is money. It's $1 billion industry. And whenever there's money involved, because we can't do this in the privacy of our own home, it would be exposed. Social services would come in and do their job. Hopefully, that's not always the case, but more so in a home than when there's money involved.
See. So if you don't mind, I know you've become, kind of an expert on this whole situation. And so I want to talk a little bit about, with the bubble of the troubled teen industry, kind of what some of the offshoots are so that our viewers and listeners can understand. As you mentioned, there's thousands and thousands of survivors of these types of this industry coming forward to share their abuse. So it shows up in like boot camps and in religious kind of organizations. What are a couple other ways that there might be under this troubled teen industry?
Sure. And this is what I wanted to clarify on the last time. They're not just a Lester roll-off programs. They're wilderness camps, they're wilderness programs, rehabilitation programs, boot camps for kids, reform schools for the wayward. And the list goes on, whether they're non-religious, religious, licensed, unlicensed. Provo Canyon, for example, is ran by the state, and they're still abusing children. I just interviewed Rachel Davey last year, and again, Paris Hilton had acknowledged that and retweeted that, liked my tweet. But she was acknowledging that, yes, it's an issue. Forget about new management because it's just an excuse, but they're just covering up. so much. These people aren't prosecuted. And like we were discussing before, there's a trail of these camps that when you don't prosecute someone and there's no repercussions for their actions, they'll just go ahead and close the school down because it got so much exposure in the media that they'll rename it. They'll just rebrand it, go to another state where the laws are different.
Wow. It seems like there's just a lot of gaps within these systems and no accountability. And the abuses that are going on that you've shared, even with your own personal story and testimony, are egregious. These are horrible abuses that are going on. And I do agree with that tide of money, but they're just turning a blind eye to these allegations.
I agree. And then I wanted to touch base on, I neglected to discuss conversion therapies. And I wanted to bring that back into the equation because we're trying to pass legislation. And James Swift, who's a survivor of a conversion therapy that was on Netflix, Haunted Season 2, Cult of Torture, he presented HB 605 to me and said, take a look at this, but there's an exemption. And he said, the exemption is religion. And I'm thinking, this is bogus because, okay, normal therapists, psychologists, credible psychologists don't acknowledge that this is a disease or a mental disorder. Okay. So how is it even a partial ban? They're saying it's a partial ban. No, it's not a partial ban because a credible therapist would not even be part of the equation.
Right.
Okay? Conversion therapy would not be part of the equation at all, period, end of story. So how is that a partial ban? Right. It's amazing what is going on. That HB 605 is dead in the water now. First of all, it was bogus anyway, but still to be dead in the water. And now radicals are saying that it's blasphemy to the church. How about it's blasphemy that you're separating the LGBTQ community from society? How about that? And that's just how I feel about what's going on. And what I'll do is I'll include the article, and also there's a recording of that article I would love to send you. It's a whole
absolutely, and we can link it in the show notes. I've just learned so much from you and your shows as well. I know you have a show, Pieces of Victory, and you have some new opportunities to be able to get this message out there for change. Tell me a little bit about some things that are on the horizon for you.
Oh, that's exactly where I wanted to lead into. I was on the Las Vegas Tonight Show with Dale Davidson, and it's a Christian network. And he just shocked me. For the amount of information that I was allowed to talk about is amazing. I feel that he thinks so outside the box, meaning he's very compassionate, but that's what it means to be a Christian in the first place. So I felt that he not only heard me, but he was going to bat for the LGBTQ community, which is amazing. I was so happy. I can't even tell you how happy I was about that. I was able to talk about the exemptions on his show, HB 605. I was able to talk about CASA and the exemptions on that. What do we need to do to rewrite that? I was able to talk about SB 127, but it's just amazing how he just stood by the LGBTQ community.
Oh, and being a Christian platform there, a media platform, also being willing to look at the difficult, complex issue around the religious ties to many of these agencies. Like you explained, it's not just specifically religious entities that have experienced this. These travesties, but definitely he's not afraid, it sounds like, to come head to head with that issue.
No, not at all. Kudos to Dale Davidson, that's for sure. And I was able to go into how torturous these camps are. And there's an increase in suicide because of the conversion therapies. When you just the thought of separating your child from the family, just the drop off and saying, okay, you are an abomination to God, because that's what the churches, some of churches are teaching this, not all, but some are saying homosexuality is an abomination to God. To think you're an abomination to God, now you think your parents think you're an abomination to them. You're separating them. And I'm just saying what the child is feeling, abandoned. And now you're dropping them off. Just that alone, forget about the torture. Just that thought of feeling not good enough for the family.
Right. And
it's so sad, and shame that you're
definitely
bringing shame to that child. That child is loaded with shame and guilt and all kinds of things. Now they're in a program where it gets worse. Now you're taking the Bible and pointing out scripture and making the child feel worse about who they are.
Right. Using all of that in the wrong way, which then we see, these traumatic issues that our survivors are exiting these programs with. And, what are some of the ways in which you have encouraged and found in your own healing journey for these survivors to be able to kind of recalibrate and realize that life is for them and that there can be joy and hope in the aftermath?
Definitely therapy helps. A lot of survivors maybe be turned away from therapy because some of these programs were called therapeutic.
Right.
And so they're afraid to reach out to a therapist. But the best bet for that is to circle yourself around survivors that are positive. How about survivors of institutional abuse with Jody Hobbs? She's very positive. That if an organization, she can lead you to the right place. There's different therapy that she can lead you to, or you can just talk to survivors that she can recommend and find positive people, such as Miranda from the Troubled podcast. We have Jason with the Hammer podcast, the Preacher Boys, myself with Pieces of Victory, James Swift with helpforteens.org. So I'd reach out to sia-now.org, help for teens, and it's help and then the number 4, helpforteens.org with James Swift, and then piecesofvictory.com with Janine Miller.
Wow, such great resources to not only find, a similar storyline maybe that you can relate to or see where someone has overcome, but also to be inspired about that piece of advocacy, kind of that grassroots, hey, I'm going to change some of these things. But just to kind of take the devil's advocate side of it for a minute, but I'm imagining, I'm a parent and I'm thinking of my daughters as teenagers. And so I'm wondering if people are hearing these messages and feeling afraid, like, are there really any good quality programs where they can find assistance when they're in those ages and there's struggles going on in the home? And, are there good programs out there? And are there things that parents should be aware of in the marketing of some of these agencies that might be red flags?
Sure. I'm going to talk about the red flags real quick. And I always tell parents, I talk to parents on my show at the end, and I say, if you have a 1% chance that any of this could happen to your child, why would you take that risk? The red flags are if you see any crossings of letters that are coming back to you, they're crossing out abuse that's going on, or the child is opening up on how they're mistreated in these places, or malnourished, starved. I mean, these things, sex trafficking is going on in these places. They're crossing it out. They're reading your mail. They're reading the mail that's going out. Everything is monitored. They're listening to the phone call conversations. When you can't see your child for a long period of time, you should be able to go to a program and just have a surprise visit. And if they won't allow you in because you have to make an appointment, that's a red flag. You should be able to drop on the property at any given time. It's your child.
So these are so great. I mean, what you said so far, really actionable. So I love that, just to be able to show up and see. I mean, it's your child that's there. When your child is placed in a situation like this, are you, as a parent, are they handing over rights? Are they signing agreements that give that institution power over
Exactly. So you're signing over guardianship over to these people. And some of them will make you sign corporal punishment. And so the parents think, well, if my child's really out of line, but I'm talking for getting a pencil, and it doesn't matter, even if your child is doing something really, you are not allowed to hit your child. You're not allowed to hit children, beat them, restrain them inappropriately. I'm talking child torture, twisting their limbs. That's what's going on at Agape. These are just basic human rights, and these children aren't even given. I wouldn't even program at all, not a residential. How about someplace where you meet for 4 hours? 4 hours, they come back, and then ask the child, how's it going? Because I don't know if you've ever seen Boy Erased. Have you seen that movie? Okay, it's about a conversion therapy with Nicole Kidman. She plays the mother. The child was there just during the day, okay? And they were brainwashing him because it was a Christian facility, and they were even hitting the kids with a Bible. And this was actually a tame conversion therapy. Tame. Wow. What they were doing was making the children feel that they were just inadequate to society and to God, which is awful. And he was believing it. So he wasn't really confronting the mother with it.
I see.
So I say, talk to the children, talk and see what is going on with this program.
Yeah.
And honestly, to parents that are considering their children for conversion therapies, don't even do it. Mm-hmm. Don't do it at all. Just love them you're going to lose your child. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're putting the situation on pause. And then when they get out, surprise, they're still gay. And even if they're conditioned, they're brainwashed. And once that brainwashing wears off, maybe it's 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years, who knows how long. But they're going to be gay no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I understand that somebody could change, but that should be their decision if they change. Mm-hmm. Don't force that change. Don't force them to change. Just love them for who they are. And it's just very simple, because you're going to lose them as a parent to either suicide or they just won't talk to you anymore.
Right. And it sounds like, why risk that? And then it's inhumane, that type of therapy, it sounds like, and then just trying to redefine who someone is as an individual. The point you made about the letters home, where things have been crossed out and blacked out, that's a big one. And I feel like, parents might have pause for concern about that, but then not be sure what to do. So, knowing that ahead of time, and with your advice, that is a red flag of when students are trying to write about things that have occurred, and then that information is not getting to, their parents or their guardian.
I also think that the schools are brainwashing the parents too. We need to talk about that. Do you want your kid to change? Don't listen to them if they'll say anything. They're manipulators. They're liars. They're the troubled teen that you gave to us. You're going to listen to everything that we say, because obviously whatever you're doing isn't working. This is the spiel that these schools and these places are feeding the parents. And the parents at this point are so vulnerable, and they'll do anything for a change in their child. And so they might overlook the crossing. They might overlook the fact that you can't see your child for 3 months. Mm-hmm. They might overlook the fact that after that, it's once a month, or maybe a phone call here and there. Mm-hmm. They might overlook a lot of things because they're so desperate.
And I love the way that you give honor to that, because you are recognizing that sometimes parents feel as if this is a last resort or an only choice at that point where they have come in their family. And so to kind of honor that for a minute, understanding that maybe parents aren't intending to place them where these outcomes are possible. But, from what Amanda shared, it sounds like, the directors, her parents, her father, all of these sexual abuse charges that have been, waged against him during these criminal investigations. So these abuses that you're speaking of, and that these survivors, friends of yours, are sharing, are real and, again, egregious. So the layers of that victimization and trauma go very deep, it sounds like.
And then back to Amanda, she was in a cult. There was no getting out. You're not leaving the property. She wasn't finding other people outside of the IFB, which is Independent Fundamental Baptist. By the way, the school I was locked in was Independent Fundamental Baptist. It was sister program to hers. And it doesn't matter. Roll-off schools and IFBs or any of the troubled teen industry, they're pretty much all ran like this. It's the same theme. I have been to survivors of institutional abuse conventions, and I was just amazed of how our stories are so similar. And she just didn't know any better. She didn't know, Amanda did not know what it was like on the outside, and it's so sad. When you have something to compare it to, then you'll think, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on here? And that's what happened. Her eyes were open. She had something to compare it to and realized that those girls were being abused. Realized she was being abused for all those years. I can't imagine. I was locked up for 8 months. I can't imagine my whole life in one of those cults.
Right. And then it to be your family, your parents, and knowing that this is the environment that you've been raised. So, I'm so grateful to have had her story and your story around the survivor piece, because there is bravery there. And now you are stepping out into this advocate role of a voice for change. So share with me about what you kind of see next, and if there's any ways in which we can jump aboard by signing petitions, by calling our legislators, by researching issues, watching podcasts, learning. How can we help with this issue?
Sure. I'm very excited again about Paris Hilton going to DC, and she is putting that federal bill, helping with putting that federal bill in motion along with other survivors. And I'm excited about that. That's very powerful because, these criminals will just rebrand, like I said, and go to another state. And we need a federal bill in place because of that reason. We need oversight.
Yes,
definitely.
And you mentioned like a system to maybe manage these where they're, where it can be exposed when they are moving state to state and all of those things too, right? So
exactly that. And then also babysitting the state. Let's take Provo Canyon, for instance. They're still abusing the children in there, and it's still open, and that is state regulated. So we really need to fine tune the legislation. That's for sure. I would like to talk about Agape boarding school, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I have been interviewing survivors. The Hammer podcast has so many testimonies on his show, countless of all these testimonies. And the school is still open today. Not to mention, every time I turn around, I'm looking at the Kansas City Star, looking at another update on Agape boarding school and all of the lawsuits against them, and rape allegations, gang rape allegations, including an autistic boy. If you run away from this school, there are testimonies of the kids running away, talking to authorities in Missouri, saying they're raping us, they're beating us, all of this in the name of God. Please help us, please help us. And they send them right back.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just so sad. It is really sad that is going on when you are a child and you're thinking that authorities can help you and rescue you. And then they toss you back into this hellhole again after you just told them. I don't feel like they're taking these kids serious, obviously. And who knows? Again, this is $1 billion industry. You can piece that wonderful puzzle together. I'm not going to say it. I don't have to say it. But there's so much corruption going on. It makes me feel so defeated because that place is still open today.
Right. Even with the allegations. And so pressure needs to be applied. I know Amanda mentioned talking to the Attorney General. I've seen some articles where he's really putting pressure on local law enforcement to make some changes and move towards charges so that the school can be shut down. So we really need to pray that will happen, and then also keep supporting these survivors as they are able to come forward and find their voice, and share their stories. I worry about the re-victimization and doing that for them, and want them to be protected, and supported in that bravery. And I know you do just that for those that you work with.
Exactly. All we can do is just keep going, keep interviewing these survivors and getting it out there, getting their stories out there and what is going on behind closed doors. I guess that's all we can do. And also talk to your local politicians and give them your story.
Yeah. Share your story and get people on board. It sounds like social media, TikTok, YouTube, these have all been vehicles for these stories to be told. And, again, I just thank you for bringing this information to us and sharing with us last month, and then joining me again today so that we could dive a little bit deeper and also put that additional call to action out there. I really want to be a part of supporting you in the change that you're doing. So is there anything else that we can do or viewers can do to support you as, you and those other survivors move forward?
I would say keep retweeting, tweeting, making comments on your platform, on the Troubled podcast, on Pieces of Victory, and the Preacher Boys, and any of these platforms that are exposing the troubled teen industry. I don't want to leave anyone out. Just keep doing that. And Netflix Haunted with James Swift, and just keep making it known that this is happening in our country, because a lot of people either turn a blind eye or they forget that this is going on. They just want to sweep it underneath the carpet.
Right.
Or they just really don't believe that this is happening in our country, the land of the free. But I wasn't free when I was locked up for 8 months. I didn't even commit a crime. And 90% of these kids haven't even committed a crime. But even a criminal doesn't deserve to be treated like this.
Right. But and to add to that, yeah, we're talking about the issues like truancy or that kind of thing. But maybe some alcohol use or dabbling in drugs, that kind of. But to like you said, no criminal record, no big issues there, and so. The awareness piece, I think, to parents that are considering something like this has been really fruitful, and the great educational piece for us there. And then the piece of inspiration for survivors to continue to find their voice. And in closing, is there anything else that we could do or share or talk about that would enhance this and support your work?
Yes, I would like to leave with, this is a whole family dynamic. If you have a troubled teen, and I hate using that word, a teenager that you feel is out of control, I think we need to look at the whole family dynamic instead of alienating the child from the family, because that alone is abandonment and it's making it worse. It's making the relationship worse. But if we can dig deep, what's going on? Are they being bullied at school? Is there some kind of friction going on in the family? What is going on? And Jody Hobbs had presented a while ago the wraparound method. And maybe we can talk to Jody and have her on the show, and she can dive into the wraparound method. But it's to have a therapist come into the family home and treat the situation as a whole family dynamic, because the child is not the problem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Don't blame the child for everything, because they're just going to feel that they're just an outcast to the family. It's so hard on their psyche.
Oh, I can only imagine. And that I would love to consider having a show around that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But, other options, the wraparound method, and other ways to work through that family difficulty, look at the family dynamic as you eloquently explained, because there are other things affecting the child and those interactions, right, than just them choosing to be bad or, all those things. So let's come about this issue in another way. instead of forcing them into these situations where all of these travesties have occurred.
Maybe get into the root of the problem. Why are they self-medicating?
Yes.
What is really going on?
Right.
Usually when kids turn to drugs, they're self-medicating. I didn't get into drugs at all, ever. I was accused of it, but a simple drug test would have sufficed. But the point I'm making is usually when someone, a child or an adult, is using drugs or alcohol, it's a form of self-medicating.
Yes.
They're trying to escape.
Right. So bringing in very, clinical people with the right types of therapy models and modalities to treat that and to go through that, but as a family. So there's not that abandonment piece. There's not, being pushed out there on your own kind of piece. So, wow. Even though this is a heavy topic, when I speak to you, Janine, I always feel encouraged because I know that even though this is such a big issue, you're out there on the front lines, you're bringing people to the table to continue to say, how can we, make change? How can we make this better? And you're sharing these stories of hope and bravery. And so thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on your platform, Brave Embrace. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll speak again soon. So for those watching and listening and those tuning in later, please check out some of these resources that Janine has shared with us. We will link to some things in the notes. Also, you can check out Janine on her website, janinemiller.org. Is it org or com?
The best way to remember it is piecesofvictory.com because my name is spelled in an unorthodox way. I don't know what parents were thinking, but they did send me to a reform school. So
gotta have a little laugh about that. I like it. Yes. So Pieces of Victory.
Piecesofvictory.com.
Yes. Thank you. I do. I want people to go. And then I can't wait to share and encourage people to watch the recent, TV telecast you did there in Las Vegas. I'm excited about that. And it sounds like, you're really, again, continuing to make a headway. So we will talk again. And for those watching, thanks for being willing to take in a little bit of these difficult storylines so that we can honor the brave. We can see how people have overcome and we can support them and rally around the need for change. So until next time, be brave.
Oh, thank you, Kim.